He broke up with me on December 31st and told me I was holding him back. He said the new year was about growth, and I was no longer part of his future. I didn't cry in front of him. I didn't beg him to stay. I just listened while he explained why leaving me felt right. What he didn't know was that by January 1st, I would be walking into a new year with a title he never saw coming. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because stories like this deserve to be heard everywhere. My name is Avery Collins, and for 3 years, I built my life around someone who believed he was always one step ahead of me. Ethan and I worked at the same company, but in different roles. He liked telling people he was ambitious. He liked saying he had big plans for the future. I supported him quietly, even when my own work mattered just as much. I stayed late to help him prepare presentations. I listened to his worries about promotions. I celebrated his small wins, even when he brushed off mine. I told myself that being supportive was part of being a good partner. At work, I kept my head down and focused. I didn't talk about the meetings I was invited to or the projects I was trusted with. I didn't need praise. I believed results would speak for themselves. At home, things felt different. Ethan talked about the future like it was a race he was running alone. He spoke about moving up, earning more, and leaving people behind who couldn't keep up. Sometimes, when he said those things, he looked at me. My mother worried I was giving too much. She asked if Ethan ever talked about our future the way I talked about his. My father noticed I was always adjusting my plans to match someone else's. My brother Luke told me more than once that I deserved someone who saw me as an equal. I defended Ethan every time. I said he was driven. I said he just needed support. I believed that love meant standing beside someone while they climbed. I didn't realize I was already climbing too. I was just doing it quietly. The weeks leading up to December 31st felt strange, like something was slowly pulling apart, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Ethan became distant in ways that were easy to excuse at first. He stayed late at work more often. He took calls in other rooms. When I asked how his day was, his answers were short, distracted, like his mind was already somewhere else. I told myself it was pressure, end-of-year stress. Ambition does that to people, I thought. At the same time, my own workload increased. I was trusted with responsibilities that mattered. Senior leaders asked for my input. Meetings I once observed quietly, I was now invited to speak in. I felt proud, but I didn't bring it home with me. I didn't want to make Ethan feel uncomfortable. Somewhere along the way, I had learned to dim my success so his could shine brighter. One evening, while we were eating dinner, I mentioned an upcoming review cycle at work. I said it casually, not expecting much. Ethan barely looked up from his phone. He nodded and said, "That's good for you," in a tone that felt empty. Then he started talking about himself, about how he felt stuck, about how people above him didn't recognize his potential. I listened, like I always did. Later that night, he said something that stayed with me. "Some people are meant to lead," he said. "Others are meant to support." He didn't say my name, but he didn't have to. I laughed it off, but inside, something tightened. I went to bed feeling small, even though I had done nothing wrong. As December went on, his comments became sharper. He questioned my goals, asked if I was really happy with my role, suggested that my comfort might be holding both of us back. When I pushed back, he accused me of being defensive. When I stayed quiet, he took that as agreement. The night of December 31st arrived quietly. No party, no big plans. He said he wanted to talk. That alone made my stomach drop. We sat across from each other, the room lit softly, the countdown on TV muted in the background. Outside, people were celebrating. Inside, everything felt heavy. He didn't waste time. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about where I'm going, about what I want this next year to look like." I nodded, waiting. "I need to start the year fresh," he continued. "No distractions, no holding myself back." I asked him what he meant, even though I already knew. He looked at me carefully, like he was choosing words that would make him sound reasonable. "I don't think we're growing at the same pace," he said. "I feel like I'm always pushing forward, and you're comfortable." That word again. I told him I was working hard too. I told him about the projects I was leading, the feedback I had received. He waved it off gently, like a parent humoring a child. That's not the same, he said. I need someone who challenges me, someone who pushes me to be more. I felt my chest tighten. I thought that's what we were doing together. He shook his head. I don't see it that way anymore. There was no anger in his voice, no hesitation, just certainty. And that hurt more than anything else. He stood up and said, I think it's best if we end this now. Clean break. New year, new focus. I asked him if there was someone else. He said no. He said this was about him, about his future, about not settling. Then he said the sentence I would replay in my head for weeks. You're holding me back. The words landed slowly, like they were looking for the deepest place to sink into. I wanted to argue. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, everything I had put on hold for him. But I didn't. I asked him one last question. So you really think you'll do better without me? He didn't hesitate. Yes, he said. I know I will. The clock hit midnight moments later. Fireworks lit up the sky outside. Cheers echoed from nearby apartments. Ethan grabbed his jacket, wished me a good year, and walked out like this was just another decision he was confident in. I sat there alone as the year changed. I felt embarrassed, not because he left, but because I had believed him for so long. I cried quietly, then stopped. At some point, the sadness turned into something else. Not anger, not revenge, awareness. I realized he never actually knew where I was headed. He never asked. He never listened when I spoke about my work. He saw me as background support in his story, not as someone with a story of her own. That night, my phone buzzed with messages from friends wishing me a happy new year. I didn't respond. My mother called, worried. I told her I was fine, even though my voice cracked. My brother Luke texted, whatever happened, remember who you are. I went to sleep feeling empty, but also strangely clear. The next morning, January 1st, I woke up early. My phone was full of missed notifications. One email stood out. It was from work. The subject line was formal and simple. It asked me to review attached documents and confirm availability for a meeting later that week. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't know what it meant, but something told me my story wasn't ending the way Ethan thought it would. While he was stepping into the new year convinced he had left someone behind, I was standing at the edge of something he never saw coming. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the email for a long time before opening it. The room was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar, like the world was holding its breath. The breakup was still fresh, still heavy, but something about that message pulled my attention away from the pain. It felt important, not urgent in a dramatic way, but solid, real. When I finally opened it, my hands stopped shaking. The email was from Daniel Price, one of the senior executives at the company. He thanked me for my work over the past year and explained that after several months of internal discussion, the leadership team had decided to offer me a new position, a management role, a role with real authority, the kind of role that came with responsibility, visibility, and trust. I read the words again to make sure I understood them correctly. They had been watching me for a long time. While I had been supporting Ethan, staying late, staying quiet, staying careful, others had been paying attention. My consistency, my judgment, my ability to handle pressure without needing praise, all of it had mattered. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath. For a moment, the weight of everything hit me at once. The breakup, the doubt, the months of feeling like I was standing still while someone else moved ahead. And then this, proof that I had not been invisible after all. My first instinct was to tell Ethan, not because I wanted his approval, but because sharing news with him had been a habit. I caught myself reaching for my phone, then stopped. I realized how automatic that reaction was, how deeply trained I had been to include him in moments that belonged to me. I put the phone down. Instead, I called my brother Luke. When I told him, he laughed in a way that made me smile for the first time since the night before. I told you, he said. You were always ahead. You just didn't need to announce it. My mother cried when I told her. not out of sadness, but relief. She said she was proud of me. My father simply said, "They see what I've always seen." That meant more than he knew. The meeting with Daniel Price took place later that week. It was professional, calm, and detailed. He explained why they chose me, how my name came up again and again in discussions, how I had earned the trust of people who mattered. At no point did Ethan's name come up. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Daniel explained that my new role would involve overseeing several projects, including the department Ethan worked in. He said it carefully, not as a warning, but as information. He watched my reaction, perhaps expecting surprise or hesitation. I didn't show either. I told him I understood the responsibility and accepted the role. After the meeting, I sat in my car for a long time before driving home. I felt something unfamiliar, but powerful settle inside me. Confidence, not the loud kind, but the kind that does not ask for permission. I thought about Ethan, about the way he had spoken to me the night before, about how certain he was that he was moving forward while I was standing still. I realized something important then. He had never asked where I was going. He had assumed, and assumptions can be expensive. I decided then that I would not say a word to him about the promotion, not out of spite, not to surprise him, but because my career was no longer something I explained or shared casually. It was something I owned. I prepared for the role carefully. I reviewed documents. I studied the teams I would be leading. I asked questions. I took notes. I showed up early and left when the work was done. I did not rush. I did not perform. I focused. At the same time, I gave myself space to heal. I let the sadness come when it needed to. I let the anger pass without feeding it. I reminded myself that the end of that relationship did not mean the end of my worth. I stopped replaying Ethan's words in my head. Whenever they surfaced, I replaced them with facts. My work, my promotion, the trust placed in me. Facts were stronger than memories. The day before I officially stepped into my new role, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual, not to impress anyone, but to recognize myself. The woman looking back at me was the same one Ethan had left, but she was also different, more grounded, more sure. I thought about how easily things could have gone another way, how close I had been to believing I was less than what I was. How many times I had stayed silent when I should have spoken. That realization didn't hurt anymore. It strengthened me. I made a promise to myself that morning. I would never make myself smaller to fit into someone else's future again. Not in love, not at work, not anywhere. When I walked into the office on my first day in the new role, I did so calmly. No announcement, no celebration, just intention. I knew Ethan would find out soon enough. I didn't need to rush the moment. Power does not need to be dramatic. It just needs to be real. And I was ready. The morning of the meeting arrived quietly, the way important days often do. I woke up early, not from nerves, but from habit. The kind of habit built from years of being prepared even when no one was watching. I dressed simply, choosing comfort over statement, because I had nothing to prove. Whatever was about to happen did not need help from me. When I walked into the office, everything felt familiar, yet different. People greeted me the same way they always had, polite and unaware. I passed Ethan near the elevators. He smiled casually, the same confident smile he had worn the night he left me. There was no hesitation in his face, no sign that he suspected anything. To him, this was just another workday. To me, it was a turning point. The conference room filled slowly. Conversations floated around the table, light and routine. Ethan joked with a coworker about New Year goals and fresh starts. I sat quietly, reviewing my notes, listening without reacting. There was a strange calm in knowing something others did not. Daniel Price entered the room and called the meeting to order. He spoke about the company's direction for the new year, about growth, accountability, and leadership. Words Ethan loved. Words he had used the night before to justify walking away from me. Then Daniel paused and said there was an important announcement to make. He explained that after months of evaluation, the company had decided to restructure leadership in several departments. He spoke about trust, consistency, and results. With each sentence, I felt Ethan straighten in his chair. I knew that posture. I had seen it before, when he believed his moment was coming. Daniel looked at me and smiled. As of today, he said, Avery Collins will be stepping into the role of department manager. She will be overseeing this team moving forward. The room went silent. I stood calmly, nodding as eyes turned toward me. Some faces showed surprise. Others showed approval. A few smiled. I met each look without flinching. Then I looked at Ethan. His expression froze in a way that was impossible to hide. Confusion came first, then disbelief. His eyes moved from Daniel to me, searching for clarification that was not coming. His mouth opened slightly, then closed. For the first time since I had known him, he did not know what to say. Daniel continued, outlining my responsibilities, including direct oversight of Ethan's role. Each word landed heavier than the last. The power shift was complete, and it had happened without drama, without cruelty, without a single personal comment from me. When the meeting ended, people approached to congratulate me. I thanked them, professional and composed. Ethan stayed seated for a moment longer than everyone else, staring at the table like it might offer an explanation. Eventually, he stood and walked toward me. His voice was lower than usual. I didn't know, he said. I know, I replied. There was so much he wanted to say. I could see it in his face. Questions, regret, maybe even shame. But this was not the place, and I was no longer the person who needed to hear any of it. We'll be working together, I said evenly. If you have questions about expectations, we can schedule time. He nodded slowly. Of course. As he walked away, I felt something settle inside me. Not satisfaction, not revenge, balance. Later that day, he sent a message asking if we could talk. I declined politely and suggested we keep communication work-related. It was not cold. It was clear. He had left me believing I was behind him. He had walked into the new year certain of his position in the world, and in less than 24 hours, that certainty had disappeared. I did not need to remind him of his words. I did not need to confront him. Life had already answered him more clearly than I ever could. As I sat at my desk, reviewing plans for the weeks ahead, I realized something simple and powerful. He had walked away thinking he was moving up, and I had been rising the entire time. The days that followed felt quieter than I expected. Not awkward, not tense, just steady. Ethan adjusted quickly at work, or at least he tried to. He became careful with his words, measured in meetings, aware now that every decision passed through me. He did his job well enough, but the confidence he once carried so easily had shifted. It was no longer loud. It was cautious. We spoke only when necessary. Emails were professional. Meetings stayed focused. I never mentioned the past, and neither did he. That silence was not avoidance. It was closure. I had nothing left to explain, and he had nothing left to teach me about myself. At home, my life felt lighter. I rearranged my space, not because I needed a fresh start, but because I finally had one. I spent evenings reading, cooking, or walking without checking my phone every few minutes. I no longer waited for someone else's schedule to decide how my time should be used. My family noticed the change immediately. My mother stopped worrying about whether I would be okay alone and started asking questions about my work instead. My father listened quietly when I talked about my plans, then said he was proud of the way I handled everything. My brother Luke laughed when I told him how the meeting went and said, I wish I could have seen his face. There were moments when I thought about December 31st and the version of myself who sat alone that night, feeling rejected and unsure. I wished I could go back and tell her what was coming, not to ease the pain, but to remind her that heartbreak does not mean failure. Sometimes it means redirection. Ethan never apologized in words. He didn't need to. His behavior said enough. He showed up prepared. He listened more. He stopped assuming. In a strange way, the situation taught him something too, though that lesson was not mine to manage. What mattered was what I learned. I learned that people who leave you during your quiet seasons rarely understand your strength. They mistake patience for weakness and humility for lack of ambition. They think progress has to be loud to be real. I learned that doing better does not always look like winning in the moment. Sometimes it looks like being overlooked while you build something solid. Sometimes it looks like staying focused while someone else is busy performing. Most of all, I learned that timing reveals truth. Ethan left me when he thought he was ahead. He believed growth meant walking away from anyone who did not fit his vision. What he didn't realize was that my vision had already moved beyond him. Becoming his boss was not about revenge. It was about alignment. I stepped into a role that matched the work I had been doing all along. The title only caught up later. I never brought up his words from that night. I never asked him if he regretted leaving. I didn't need to. Regret has a way of showing itself in quiet moments, in careful glances, in changed behavior. The new year did not give me everything I wanted. It gave me something better: clarity, confidence, control over my own direction. If you are watching this and someone has ever walked away from you right before your life changed, remember this: people often leave when they think they know your limits. They leave because they cannot imagine your future without them in it. Let them go. The most powerful response is not proving them wrong with words. It is living well without them. If this story connected with you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most.